points. How does God make a priest? Because he calls us priests. In the New Testament, 1 Peter, it shares with us that we are a holy priesthood unto God. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term, but what does it really mean? What did priests do? What was their primary function? And if you study the Old Testament at all, you will find that the Old Testament reveals that a priest was someone who dealt with things that pertained to God. He was God-focused all the time. And you can imagine what it was like to have no property. You might have had a family, but you had nothing to take care of but the worship of God. Well, for those of us who are now Gentiles brought near to experience the dwelling place of God, to be in the covenant blessings that Jesus has translated us to or brought us into by the ripping away of the veil, which was a very thick veil that separated God from his people and from the world. That veil has been torn asunder from the top to the bottom, representing the fact that God tore it, not man. And he has granted us access into the Holy of Holies and has given us the opportunity to draw near. And we are commanded in Hebrews to draw near in boldness. How many times have you wondered or doubted, is God with me? How many times have you wondered, how do I pray? How many times have you been wrestling with, will God give me something that I really need? God, give me a husband. Give me children. Give me a job. Show me where you want me to go. Well, we are to come boldly as though we are priests, because we are. In the new covenant, every person is a stone in the temple of God. Vitally important. If there's any stone that's out of place or missing, the temple is not complete. So we have to take up our place, and we have to establish ourselves in the architecture of what God is building. We have a place. Know that for certain. That if you are born again, if you have connected with Jesus Christ by faith, the invisible God becomes evidently visible inside of you. And you are now you've been given the title of priest. And you are also a king. You will reign in the world to come. You will reign here where God places you. You will reign over your circumstances. You will be stronger than your opponent, Satan, and any demonic host. But you have to know who you are. Well, Peter, toward the very end of his life, writes 2 epistles, and he is working toward the goal of speaking into the lives of those Jews that were scattered abroad to Asia Minor. Through persecution, they were sent to a place they didn't feel comfortable in. Sojourners, and they were pilgrims. And if you can imagine the father heart of Peter, he is very concerned to establish the people in the truths that he learned while being an apostle and a disciple of Jesus Christ. I want us today to take the time and dwell on the topic of being a priest. I'm going to start in chapter 1 of 1 Peter and start reading about his understanding and what the Lord revealed to him of his salvation, because it's true for us. He says in verse 4, to obtain an inheritance filed and will not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. Do you understand that if you're a slave or if you're someone who is poor in this life, but yet you know Christ and you've been born again, you walk with God in your slavery or in your bondage or in your poverty, yet you are rich toward God. James says, let the poor man recognize his high estate, and let the rich man recognize that he is poor. That if you are poor in this world's stuff, you are rich towards God. We don't try to be poor, but if circumstances, when we are called, are such that we are a slave, Colossians says, if you are a slave, remain a slave. Remain in the calling wherewith you were called. If you are saved, a free man, stay a free man. Don't put yourself under bondage. But this inheritance comes to you in spite of your current circumstances. It is yours. It has been reserved for you. It will not fade away like money fades. Even gold fades. Over time, gold changes color. And you got to buff it up to make it look good. But our heavenly inheritance is never going to fade away. It is protected by the power of God through faith. Do you realize that if you don't think about your heavenly inheritance, if you're not dwelling on Christ, if you're not dwelling on your inheritance and its details and what it includes, your position and what you're going to do in the heavenly state, you're not going to have the power to move in God's grace and in His open doors. So you won't even see what you're to do. So it is protected by faith. The power of God comes when a man or a woman exercises faith. That faith is that supernatural faith we've been discussing. It's ready to be revealed in that last day. You got to hold all to get your benefits, to get your reward, to cash in your dividends. They are in the world to come. They're in the day of His appearing. And He says, you greatly rejoice, even though now, for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold which is perishable, even though tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Your faith is precious. Do you know why? Our faith is precious because we have allowed the Lord to test it by fire, to let God have that place of God in our hearts and in our lives and in our whole way, to be God, to set Himself up as Lord of our life. And He says, though you may have a delay, and though you may feel weak and poor in this world's goods, do not give up, because someday it will all make sense. Someday you will revel in the glorious riches that you have obtained by your faith, that you will receive at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And though you have not seen Him, He says, you love Him. Do you love Him? And though you do not see Him now, but believe in Him, you greatly rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory. I want you to start to move in the settledness of joy. That no matter if your bank account has thousands of dollars in it, tens of thousands, millions, billions, or zero or negative, if you know Christ and you believe on Him and you love Him with all your heart, you are His. And you should be excited about the future. Our future is good. When the heavens part and the trumpets sound and the mighty angels introduce our Lord, we are going to be okay. But everybody else who did not take and receive God's invitation to accept His Son will be separated forever